So I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole for Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. We have two items on our agenda tonight. No, three items. Ordinance 2111 to amend Title II of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Administration and Personnel in regard to updating and harmonizing portions of Title II. Then we have Ordinance 2112 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic in regard to restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. And our last item is Ordinance 2113, also regarding Title 15, which amends a schedule of no parking zones and a schedule of loading zones. So let's go ahead and start with Ordinance 2111. I believe Mr. Mike Rooker is here from the City Legal to talk us through this ordinance. Mr. Rooker.
Thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. My name is Michael Rooker, and I'm the City Attorney for the City of Bloomington. It's good to see everybody again virtually. I'm here tonight to present Ordinance 21-11. 21-11 is one of those ordinances that comes up from time to time with regard to the Bloomington Municipal Code that's designed to clean up portions of the code that have become outdated or obsolete due to changes in statutes, court proceedings, contractual obligations, or innovations in best practices. It's just a piece of maintenance legislation. So just to quickly update the City Council on the changes that are included in 2111, which are also detailed in the memorandum provided to the City Council. First, in a number of places, Ordinance 21-11 corrects references. For example, there are references to the now changed Transportation and Traffic Services Division of the Planning and Transportation Department, which is now the Engineering Department, and to the Transportation and Traffic Engineer, who has now been replaced by the Director of Engineering. Second, there are a number of changes to those enabling ordinances for the city's boards and commissions that are no longer, that are now obsolete, I guess I would say. For example, in 2019, there was a change to the Utility Service Board where the political affiliation requirements for that board were eliminated. Those political affiliation requirements still exist in the enabling ordinance that exists in the city code, and that enabling ordinance is proposed to be changed by 2111 to make it harmonize with the state legislative requirements. Also, the Bloomington Telecommunications Council is eliminated by Ordinance 21-11. That council hasn't met since 2013. A couple of pieces of legislation in 2006 and then subsequently in 2011 stripped that council of any and all authority, and so it stopped meeting. But for whatever reason, it's just one of those items that remained in the municipal code, and 2111 eliminates any reference to it. There are a couple of other changes to bring the Housing and Neighborhood Development section of Title II up to speed with what the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department is doing now, and to make sure that the positions referenced in that chapter of Title II are current with the positions that exist in the department today, and also to update the section on the Bloomington Housing Quality Appeals Board, or the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, excuse me, which we abbreviate BHQA, to make sure that the enabling ordinance for that body reflects current practices and also eliminates contradictions. There are a few other sort of miscellaneous changes that are in 2111. It's just one of those omnibus cleanup bills. For example, the ordinance authorizes the appointment of alternate members of to the Parking Commission. It also eliminates references to the specific leave allotments for municipal employees. Those are changing constantly. Employee leave rules we're negotiating a collective bargaining agreement with one of our three bargaining units basically every year, 3 out of 4 years, and leave is frequently discussed. And of course, the personnel manual changes from time to time as well. So instead of specifically stating what the rules are, Ordinance 2111 references those documents to make it more flexible and a little bit more limber with regard to employee leave. And then also Ordinance 2111 cleans up a few miscellaneous items. There's a reference to firemen, still in Title II of the Municipal Code. Of course, we use the non-gendered term firefighter now, so that's corrected. And then also the merited rank of sergeant in the Entitled to has been replaced with the merited rank of chauffeur by our collective bargaining agreement, so we make that correction. An annual report in Bloomington's living wage ordinance that we have no record of ever having been prepared. Section on that is eliminated. That report is redundant at this point. The city publishes all of its contracts on the city's website, and they're available for review by council members and any member of the public at any time. And those contracts contain the information that would be in that report. And then, of course, we eliminated as well Chapter 2.52 of Title II, which talked about the process for disposing of surplus municipal property. That process is entirely governed by state law, and there's no need for a contradictory and duplicative local code requirement for that process. So 2111 is really a sort of a boring piece of legislation, I think, the sort of thing lawyers love and everybody else is bored with. I certainly hope you will consider it, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Rooker. Are there any questions about Ordinance 2111? Yes, Councilmember Scambaluri.
Thanks. And for the record, I don't find it boring. So there. Just going through the ordinance, a couple questions for my background information. Section 4, which refers to the Parking Commission, and maybe this is a question for Councilmember Rowland too. I'm not aware of other boards and commissions that have, for whom we have codified rules about picking alternates. Is there a reason that's done with a parking commission and not others, or is it, or could you speak to that?
So there are, I believe, a couple of other boards and commissions that do have rules for alternates. I'm going to be working from memory here, and I can verify this for you perhaps after the meeting. I think the Board of Zoning Appeals has language on alternates, and there may be one or two others as well, specifically in the city code. That was a request that came from staff just to make sure. I think there have been some concerns about making sure that the meeting was attended because obligations for planning and transportation staff with the number of meetings, evening meetings they have to attend, sometimes it can be complicated to get everybody there. So to have alternates really helps scheduling flexibility, at least for that position. So that's what they wanted to do, but they would prefer to have it codified in the code as opposed to something more informal. Of course, Councilmember Volan, I think probably knows more about the Parking Commission than I do, so he may have a unique perspective on it as well.
What was the question again, Councilmember Scambaluri?
I'm just curious as to how we came to decide that the Parking Commission would have alternate appointees. Not all boards and commissions do, and I'm just wondering what the thinking was for Parking Commission.
Well, part of the challenge has been, at least when it was first constituted, that we were trying to target the specific, the most specific constituencies that were affected by parking, and that proved to be difficult to do. So slowly over the years, we've been loosening the requirements. It's helpful to be able to be more flexible. So, I mean, I didn't have a problem with what the administration was proposing here.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And Mr. Rooker, one other question in section 16 of the ordinance regarding chapter 2.52 of the Bloomington Municipal Code, property sales shall be deleted in its entirety without replacement. Is there other language governing the disposition of city property or that spells out those procedures in a different area of code, or where should we look for that, I guess?
Yes, so that's covered entirely by state code in Title 22 of the Indiana State Code. Oddly enough, disposition of local government property is part of Indiana's purchasing statute, which is sort of ironic, but also makes sense subject matter wise. So there are some very detailed rules governing the disposition of surplus property there.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, other questions? Councilmember Volan.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Rooker, for this legislation. We've talked about it before when you introduced it to me. I did want to ask sort of a theoretical question. I don't disagree that the Telecom Council is dormant. There had been a proposal, before it went dormant, about converting it to something more modern, where we would take up issues of equity, of access to data privacy among citizens. Can you speak at all about the merit of such a body, or at least what concerns that we as a council should have towards these modern problems of Bloomington citizenry?
So I can do my best to speak to those. I dare say I think you're probably in a better position to speak on the substance of those issues, and certainly there are officials at the city who are more knowledgeable than I am. I do know that we do have an oversight body for issues, at least city issues that are like this. I believe it's the BUDAC, and I'm going to do my best. I think that stands for Bloomington Underground Digital Advisory Council.
It's a digital underground, but you got it right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So those issues do have a forum, and of course, digital equity has been a priority for this administration, and I know we will continue to discuss it. If there is a point in time where it becomes appropriate for a task force or even a more permanent board or commission to be constituted to discuss those issues, of course, this body would have the power to create such a board or commission. I don't know that that necessarily means that we ought to retain a confusing vestigial portion of the municipal code, because it might one day be useful for that purpose. I think if you want to create a body for that purpose, you should sit down and do it and sort of draft a purpose statement in the municipal code that gives some guidance to a body like that.
That's generally my thought too, but I wanted to hear some kind of statement from the administration, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Rooker? Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. This may be a bit redundant, but Mr. Rooker, do we anticipate any type of fiscal impact on this legislation?
No, thank you for asking that. I've neglected to mention it in my presentation, but the memorandum presented to council does indicate that there would be no fiscal impact from this legislation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council members? I have a couple of small questions. First of all, I just wanted to follow up on Councilmember Volan's question. So the BDUAC, Bloomington Digital Underground Advisory Committee, did I get that right? Now that advises only on the city's own broadband, right? It doesn't concern broadband or data access outside of the city's own network. Am I right about that? Or what does that committee actually address?
That is my understanding for the role that committee plays. If you wanted more detailed information about the BDUAC, I would want to have a conversation with ITS to see if there are other issues they've discussed at points in time at their meetings. But that's my understanding of their role.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And then my second question is even more simple, and that is, in your memo, you mentioned the engineering division, but it's a department, right? It's the engineering department.
Yes, it is. If I typed division, I apologize. That was simply a scribble there.
No problem. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Other questions, Councilmember Volan?
I mean, part of the point of that one component of this ordinance was to acknowledge that the seat on the council or on the parking commission was to come from a particular division of planning that's now it's now a separate department. So it's just clean up, clarifying language, because the engineering department came after the creation of the parking commission. So in case anybody's not clear about that, that's one of the points of the change they're proposing.
Other questions on this item of legislation? I have one more clarifying question just based on other questions. So the parking commission. So the new wording says each appointing authority may also appoint a standing alternate for each of its appointees. So the appointing authority is the mayor or the city council, right? So for each seat, the mayor or the city council can also appoint a standing alternate?
That's correct.
Right. Okay, so it's not just an alternate for the staff members who serve on that commission ex officio, right? It's alternate for for all of the members.
That's correct, for every seat on the Parking Commission. It's not a requirement that an alternate be appointed, but there isn't the option of appointing an alternate at the appointing authority's discretion.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Councilmember Volan?
Yeah, I do have a quick question, Mr. Rooker. Like, I know that it has been something of a concern to know which staff member was supposed to sit in the staff seat. Is there a particular reason why the administration wanted to name alternates for every seat? I mean, I'm not, I don't have an opinion either way. I'm just trying to understand why you wanted to make it for every seat.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I feel like that's more equitable if staff has the flexibility to have an alternate attend in their seat. It ought to be, that option ought to be available for other members as well. I certainly don't think that there is a great deal of thought that went into that. It just seems to be equitable, and that's consistent as well with the other, I believe it's the BZA in particular that I can remember off the top of my head, the Board of Zoning Appeals. The option to appoint an alternate is made available to every single member who sits on that body, or every single appointing authority for that body, if that makes sense.
Is it the administration's opinion that every board and commission should have that option?
No, I wouldn't say that we want to overly complicate things by creating that number of appointments, but where it has been a challenge, or where we want to see an alternate as an option because attending a meeting can be complicated, I think it makes sense to have that option on the table.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Rooker, is it because there have been problems meeting quorum for that commission?
I think Councilmember Volan could probably speak to that better than I can. My understanding is from staff is that there's been difficulty at times for the staff member who sits on that commission to make it to that meeting given other obligations.
Right.
Councilmember Volan?
Yeah, but that's actually curious because, yeah, that's true. It's been a challenge for the representative who's coming from the planning department to attend. But I point out that a greater concern than alternates is that there are still 2 mayoral seats that are unfilled and have been for many, many months. So I'm not sure where we would find alternates to a seat that don't have a person sitting in them at all. So I definitely endorse the idea that the seat occupied by a staff member should have flexibility about who sits in it. But that person really should be named, and it shouldn't just be any old staff member. It should be a person who they name to be the alternate. And I don't think it really solves the problem of mayoral vacancies in general, but it might be a boon to council-appointed seats. But so far, the council-appointed seats have been in attendance. So they generally, like, I don't really see absences among the council appointees. I don't know if that helps any.
It puts a context in it. Thank you. I mean, it puts it in a context. Any other questions for Mr. Rooker on Ordinance 2111? All right. Well, we will go to, thank you, Mr. Rooker, and we will go to the public. If there's any member of the public who would like to talk about Ordinance 2111, cleanup and small changes to Title II of our municipal code. If you would like to speak to this issue, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom, or alternately, you can put a message in the chat directed towards the meeting host. And Mr. Lucas is assisting us with this, so do you see anybody?
I do have one comment that came in over chat. If you give me just a moment. This comment is from Dave Askins with the B Squared Beacon. The comment reads, at last month's Board of Safety meeting, there were 2 grievances heard from firefighters. And the general topic had to do with leave, vacation, and how that got compensated upon retirement or resignation. Question, would this code cleanup, if it had already been done, have prevented the conflicts in interpretation that caused those grievances to be pursued? And that is the end of the comment. And at the moment, I don't see any other requests for members of the public.
All right. What last call, if there's any member of the public who would like to comment on Ordinance 2111, please use the raise hand function in Zoom or leave a chat message for the meeting host. Still nothing, Mr. Lucas?
No, thank you.
All right. All right, we'll come back to council for, let's see if there are any follow-up questions first. Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes, if Mr. Rooker could address the question that was just asked by Mr. Askins.
Certainly, and I can only address it from the administration's perspective. Those grievances are ongoing. So, if we had a representative from the IAFF here, you might have a different perspective than me, but I feel confident in stating that this ordinance would not have impacted the outcome of either of those grievances.
If I may follow up, I thought the question pointed towards wondering if this ordinance would clarify which personnel policies applied in the case of these two grievances. Do you think it would serve to clarify that in the future?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The basic hierarchy, just to run it down, the collective bargaining agreement, negotiated terms in a collective bargaining agreement take precedent over all other terms, and thereafter any term in the personnel manual would govern as to those items that the collective bargaining agreement is silent on. So and I don't believe that this legislation would have had any impact on those grievances.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other clarifying questions before we move to comments? All right. Seeing none, would any council members like to make a final comment on Ordinance 2111? Councilmember Volin.
Yeah, I want to address the Telecom Council thing. The last time, again, that it met was in 2013. It's been a long time. It grew out of the need to oversee the cable franchise fee. I have received email from a former member of the Telecom Council who thinks that, and that's where my questions come from on it. I do think that there are concerns about especially the concerns about data privacy that are going to become increasingly important to Bloomington in the near future. But I agree with the administration that I don't think there's a compelling reason to keep the Telecom Council around just to reconstitute it for that sake. I do believe that we might want to consider broadening the mission of the Bloomington Digital Underground Advisory Commission, because I think maybe the word underground is a bit dated, that maybe they can be broadened to consider broader issues like this. But they're tackling similar issues. So, I've generally been in agreement that there's not much point to rehabbing Telecom Council. I have a proposal from 10 years ago that would have rehabbed it, but there just hasn't been a compelling call for it since. So I'm not opposed to either expanding the BDUAC or creating a new commission if people see fit, but not right now. Secondly, I just want to strongly encourage the administration to fill the remaining seats on the Parking Commission. They've done 2 of 4. The council has interviewed at least one very strong member who we won't have room for in one of our appointments, I suspect, and we're going to, looking forward to Transportation Committee is looking forward to forwarding those names to the administration in the hopes that they will appoint them to the Parking Commission. Thank you.
Are there any other council members who would like to make a comment on the ordinance? And if not, I'll entertain a do pass recommendation.
Move to pass for ordinance 2111.
Second.
Second that.
All right, and I'll just call your names as I see them on my screen. Councilmember Scambaluri,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Volin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
and Councilmember Rollo.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So that's a do pass recommendation of 8-0 for ordinance 2111. So next we move to ordinance 2112 regarding restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. And I believe this is an ordinance that was brought forward by members of the council. And frankly, it's sort of unclear to me who all the co-sponsors are. I know Councilmember Rosenbarger is definitely one of the sponsors. Could you clarify perhaps who the other sponsors are?
Sure. It's Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Volin.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councilmember Rosenbarger, do you have a presentation for us this evening?
Yeah, I have a really short presentation to share.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Oops. Okay, this is loading. So this is let me just make sure it loads. I've been having trouble with it today.
We can see it on the screen, Councilman.
Oh, you can?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, I can't see it. So we'll just,
Well, now it says loading.
It's loading again.
oh, okay. Yeah, mine says loading. Hang on one second. Let me just try it again. And if I can't, we can pull it up somewhere else too. We kind of planned for this. So it is. Well, let's see. Am I sharing right now?
No.
No. Let me try to share it. I don't want to take up too much time, right? Let me just try to share it without doing full presenter mode, maybe. Is it okay if I just share it like this?
Yes, but we can't see it yet.
Smaller. You can't?
No,
Sure.
it says you've
That's it.
started screen sharing, but we cannot see. There it
There you
comes.
go. There you go.
Okay, you have it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so short. It's very quick. Okay, thanks for that. Sorry about that. Okay, so this amendment is, it's a proposed amendment to Title 15 of the Bloomington Code, and it expands our restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. What it does is it includes every signalized intersection in the downtown overlay to say no right turn on red. And then it also includes some campus signalized intersections in the dense areas where folks are walking. This is, like I said, co-sponsored by Council Members Smith and Volin, and then it is supported by the Bike Ped Safety Commission and the Traffic Commission, and also Planning and Transportation and the Engineering Department. So just a few quick notes, the reasons sort of why we brought this. It's a higher risk to pedestrians and people on bikes if right turns on red are allowed. On a macro scale, if you keep making it easier for people to drive their cars without waiting, more people drive more. And for this, we are looking at national trends because a sample size is so small in terms of data. If you all have data questions about crashes and injuries and everything, we sort of look at national trends there because, right, we just have a very small sample size here. So the safety issue is this. So if you are the blue car and you're trying to turn right on red, what you are doing is looking, your view is here in this red triangle because you're looking at oncoming traffic so you can make a turn, and what you're missing are the little yellow circles here, which could be pedestrian.
Have you advanced the slide?
Yeah, you guys can't see it?
It's coming slowly, I think.
We don't
Yeah,
see the little yellow
Slides are moving
circles.
slower than you're speaking, so just
Okay.
slow down just a little bit.
Okay.
We're waiting for the next slide
One
to
more
come up.
forward, yeah. Right, next slide needs to come up.
Do you see it?
Advance it.
We see the sample size is so small slide.
Okay, no, I did advance it. Okay, so
Yeah, it's taking a
it
minute.
should be, okay, I'm sorry.
There you go.
There you go.
Go ahead.
It's there now? Okay. Okay, so you can see the blue square is like a car. And then when you're looking to turn right on red, what you're doing is looking where this orange arrow is, because you're looking at oncoming traffic, because that is the harm to you. And what you're missing are the pedestrians and the people on bikes that are actually to your right. So these slides are all the same. I'm not sure if it's advancing, but do you see the next one?
Not
No,
yet.
it's still loading. Give it a second.
Okay, they're
Oh,
all
there's
really, honestly,
The orange dots, are those the
Similar.
pedestrians?
yes, those are the pedestrians, like fake pedestrians. And there is actually a person on a bike right in front of the car. So that's really the end of the presentation. So I'll stop sharing my screen. It was really short. I know this is like committee of the whole, so it's just a preview. So that is the ordinance. I also sent everyone the map of the intersections just because it's hard to get that into a slide and you might want to zoom in. In that map, the PDF, the red dots would be new restrictions. The blue dots already are existing restrictions. So we can answer questions, and also I think Mr. Copper is here as well to answer questions. Let me see. Yeah, he is.
Thank you, Councilmember Rosenbarger. And
Welcome.
I'll remind the public and my colleagues that this presentation was issued as a packet addendum this afternoon. So we can look at those slides on our own. I think they are instructive when you look at the sequence of them. Do any co-sponsors have anything to add before we go to Mr. Copper?
I think that this is really a good effort forward and led by a council member, Rosenbarger, who did all the heavy lifting to try to make it safer downtown for all the pedestrians that are downtown. And given the fact that there's been some fatalities over the last year, 9 months, I think this is a really good idea. And so I thank her for all her efforts at putting this together and working with the city staff.
Great. Councilmember Volan, do you have anything to add to the presentation?
Councilmember Smith, yeah, definitely speaks for me. Councilmember Rosenbarger has done really great work here. And as the district representative for the place where the fatalities took place in the past 2 years, I strongly agree with this proposal and have been glad to co-sponsor it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, let's go to Mr. Copper from the engineering department to hear the staff's perspective on this ordinance. Mr. Copper?
Good evening, Council. Neil Copper. I'm the Senior Project Engineer in the Engineering Department. I'll be pretty brief, but happy to answer any questions. Staff was admittedly hesitant when this first came forward, but after diving deeper into the data and looking at the specific locations, we are fully supportive. We do think this will improve safety for everyone, and especially for pedestrians, our most vulnerable road users. And we expect there will be only very minimal delay trade-offs to those in motor vehicles. So again, we're supportive and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Copper. Are there any questions from council members, either for the sponsors or for staff? Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Copper, where you said staff was admittedly hesitant at the beginning, what were some of the reasons or some of the issues that caused hesitation at the beginning?
The primary thing I would say is if you prohibit turns on red, then you're then increasing turns on green. So you have a certain pedestrian conflict with turns on red, and you have a different pedestrian conflict with turns on green. So there's potential that your turns on green are actually more problematic than your turns on red. Specific, geometric features at an intersection. So we did some research on that and types of intersections where that might be true, and then we looked at the area, the locations that were proposed. We didn't find anything that we thought would where we thought that would happen. So that was the big thing.
Okay, thank you. And there's several intersections that this ordinance proposes to change. So in your research, we found that that would not be a problem in any of the multiple intersections or signalized intersections that we're talking about this evening?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I do have another question for the sponsors, if that's okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm not so sure who would want to answer this, but in the presentation, well, first of all, I think at the next regular session, I think we'll get a full presentation. Of course, there will be minutes and all that taking at the time. And I understand today is supposed to be brief. So thank you for that. But my question is, one of the comments in your presentation was that if you keep making it easier to drive without waiting, then more people will drive. And I do understand the safety aspect with regard to pedestrians and bicycle riders. But that statement, was that intended to indicate or infer that the intent is to lessen vehicle traffic at some of these intersections?
Councilmember Rosenbarger?
I think that would be Councilmember Rosenbarger, I think, just main sponsor.
Anyone can answer. It's just saying the more convenient you make any mode, the more convenient and safe you make any mode of transportation, the more people will do it. So if you make walking and biking more convenient, more people will do that.
Okay, is part of the intent that it will lessen vehicular traffic? Is that part of the intent or goal of this ordinance?
Councilmember Smith, if anyone wants to weigh in on that.
I'd like to weigh in, but
I don't think that was ever part of the intent. It was to make it safer. That was the intent.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Smith. I'm done, Chair.
All right, Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask of the staff, I guess this would be for Mr. Copper, with respect to any kind of change in ordinance or change in our code, there's a element of public education that I think is required. Also, I have a question concerning what kind of signage may be required to assist in the compliance for this. And then last but not least, if there is additional signage that's required, is there any fiscal impact that we need to ask more questions about for next time?
Is that, I think that part of the fiscal impact part of that was addressed, I believe. Councilmember Rosenbarger, do you want, I see your hand, do you want to address that part? Or?
Yeah, I think the fiscal impact is for the sponsors. So yes, that was included in the packet, and it says that Public Works did work on the fiscal impact. It's about $100 per sign. That's $50 per sign to create, $50 of labor to have it put up. It's about $25 an hour for 2 people to work for 1 hour to put a sign up. They don't anticipate any closures of streets. This is done regularly, and it's done from parking spots or sidewalks. And so it would be about 75 signs, 75 to 90 signs. New signs, because of course they're already in existence at many of these intersections. So it would be about $7,500 to $9,000.
All right, thank you for that. And then again, with respect to the public education, with respect to compliance, who best to answer that question?
Mr. Copper, do you want to take a stab at that one, or?
Yeah, I think probably the most effective education will be the fact that there will be signs installed. Those signs go up on the signal mast arm right next to the signal heads where drivers are looking. So that's going to get the message across, I think, more than anything else. And then it's also worth noting that you probably do get some benefit of focusing on an area like this, where now every single traffic signal in this area will have that same rule, and it's probably easier to learn. When you're in this area, all of them have that rule, as opposed to now it's a few of them do and a few of them don't.
Okay, I guess my larger question had to do with, it does take a while for people's behaviors to change. And will there be anything more than just signage with respect to, some sort of education campaign? I don't know who that would come from, if that would come from just our communications department or if that's a public safety issue, but that would be a question I would like answered between now and next week's presentation or our next regular session's presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to respond if I could.
Yes, Councilmember Volin.
So there is already a good example of a no turn on red in the downtown, and it's at the corner of Atwater and Henderson when it turns into Indiana. So if you're heading north on Henderson turning into Indiana, you cannot turn right on red. Now, these are two one-way streets, but it's a very heavily trafficked, foot trafficked intersection. I go through it regularly. But I do share Councilmember Sandberg's concern about education with so many new signs going up. I think if we were to invest in a couple of extra signs that, and I'd like to encourage the administration to do this, but this is not part of the ordinance, but if there are a couple of extra large signs saying, now no turn on red throughout downtown, please keep an eye out for those signs at certain strategic entry points to the downtown, I think, or to the areas where there are no turn on red signs, that would, I think, do a good job of generally explaining to the public that, and not at the light level, but at the level, the street sign level. We really should do a couple of those signs. And if we were to invest in them, I think that'd be a good investment, it'd be worth it. I certainly hope the administration will be willing to spring for another couple $100 worth of those signs to let people know that this is happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and if there are other ideas, maybe the sponsors and the staff can confer between now and next week and see if there's any other outreach methods available. Other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. If any members of the public would like to comment on Ordinance 2112, which adds many intersections to the list of no turn on red in our city code. If you'd like to make a comment on this, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom, or you can type a chat message using the chat function. You can type a message to our meeting host. So any questions or any public comment on Ordinance 2112?
I do have a comment that came in via chat that I can read.
Okay.
This comment is from Dave Askins with the B-Square Beacon. Mr. Askins says, I have a question about the map with the blue and red dots. Blue dots already have no turn on red. The red dots are proposed to have no turn on red. My question is about number 78 and number 47 on the map, which are at Walnut and 6th Street, an intersection I am staring at, even as Mr. Lucas is reading this comment. Number 78 is on 6th Street and the east side of the intersection, and the key says the relevant turn is from south to east, but 6th Street is one way headed east at that location. So I think maybe the intent was to put that dot on the west side of the intersection, and the direction of the turn is supposed to be from west to north. Can someone confirm? A similar issue is number 47, which is a dot on Walnut just south of 6th Street. And the key says the relevant turn is from east to north. I think the relevant turn would be from south to east. Can someone confirm? And that is the end of the comment. And at the moment, I don't have any additional requests for comment.
All right. Anybody else in the public would like to comment? You can use the raise hand function or type in a chat for the meeting host.
I do have another comment that I'm going to assume is meant for public comment. Virginia Hall says, how about media, education, radio, HT, and digital sites? And that's the end of the comment. If there are any other folks that want to send in any comments via chat, you're welcome to do so.
All right, going once, going twice. Do you see anything, Mr. Lucas?
I do not, no.
All right, we'll come back to council members for additional questions, follow-up questions. Yes, Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. I'd like to answer the sponsor. What was the feedback from Bloomington Police Department with regard to their responsibility of enforcement should this be adopted?
Any of the sponsors want to?
Yeah, BPD sees this as very straightforward and didn't have any issues with it.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And I'll just ask, I guess, the question that Councilmember, I'm sorry, that Dave Askins asked. I didn't catch all of that, but it had to do with intersections 78 and 47 on the map. I don't know if anybody, Councilmember Volan, can you address that?
I can only address one intersection, which I believe is 78, the corner of Walnut and 6th. The question was it, so there, it's Walnut is one way north and 6th Street is one way east at Walnut, but west of Walnut, it's two way. So the question was, did it mean to cover right turns on red from people going north on Walnut and turning east on 6th? I think that's already the case, but if it's not, it should be. But in the case of people traveling east on 6th who are on the west side of Walnut, who are turning left to go north onto Walnut, that's a two-way street. It should not be, I mean, I know that people aren't coming from the other way, but I don't know that it's a left turn on red, and I'm not sure it was intended.
Yeah, Mr. Lucas, did you have something to add to this?
I just wanted to note, I haven't pulled up the map to see if there might be a stray dot. I will note the actual legislation. The intersection to be added at Walnut and 6th Street lists from the south to the east, which I believe is, as Mr. Volan just stated, is the only possible turn on red at that intersection.
Right turn on red, yeah.
Any turn on red. So I'd have to check the map. There may have been a stray dot that shouldn't have been there, but I believe the legislation just lists the turn from, if you're headed north on Walnut, so coming from the south and then heading east on 6th Street. That's the only possible turn on red at that intersection.
Yeah, we can look at the visual depiction of it and make sure it's looks correct.
I will also note that these are not just no right turn on red. These are no turn on red. I believe there is one intersection where it's possible to, at the moment, be headed, I believe, north on a one-way street and then turn left on red at 3rd Street. So you'll see that reflected as well.
Mr. Lucas, could you review what the other one was? It was number 47. I'm trying to find it on the map. Which intersection is that?
If I understood the comment correctly, I believe both of those points were at the intersection of Walnut and 6th Street.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
And so there may have been an extra red dot that didn't need to be there, but I believe the legislation just lists the turn from the south to the east at that intersection.
All right, so we can double check our maps before next week.
Yes.
Any other follow-up questions before we go to comment? All right, seeing none, would any council members like to comment on ordinance 2112? If not, I would also accept a motion.
Move to pass on ordinance 21-12.
Second.
All right, do pass recommendation has been made, and I'll just call the names as I see them on my screen again. Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Volan,
Yes.
Councilmember Scambaluri,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Councilmember Rollo.
Yeah.
And I also will vote yes. So that's a do pass 8-0 for ordinance 2112. And we will move on to ordinance 2113. And I think we have with us tonight Amir Farshi. Would you like to go ahead, Mr. Farshi?
Sure. Hello, I'm Amir Farshi, long-range planner for the Planning and Transportation Department. Let me share my screen. One second. So, can you see my screen?
Not quite yet. We will wait another moment.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So the ordinance proposes various amendments to the Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic. Title 15 is the title of the code subject to frequent change and revisions. These proposals are the result of feedback from the Planning and Transportation, Engineering, Parking Services Division of Public Works, and legal departments. The purpose of this recommendation is to address issues that have come to staff's attention through public requests, commission's recommendations, or 180-day orders. Some items are related to safety issues, improving visibility for people, safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, traffic calming, and housekeeping changes. This request for changes to Title 15 was presented to the Traffic Commission and Parking Commission in February 2021. The ordinance makes the following changes to Title 15. The ordinance deletes 3 no parking zones. Let me show you the map. The ordinance adds 10 no parking zones and 2 loading zones. These locations, the details and maps are included in the meeting packet. And please let the staff know if you have any questions. And let me introduce the staff who are in this Zoom meeting. We have Neil Copper, Senior Project Engineer, Beth Rosenbarger, Planning Services Manager, I believe, joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farshi. Could you please go back to the map? Sorry, you just unshared, but could you please go back to the maps and just describe to us each change individually? I think that will cut down on questions.
Sure. Let me change. Zoom. Yeah. So the first part of the ordinance is that the ordinance deletes these 3 no parking zones from Title 15 on 6th Street between Adams Street and Elm Street, I believe. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah. Here it is from Elm Street to this area of Pine Street. These three red areas, and you can see some photos. The ordinance adds 10 no parking zones in this area, in Renwick area. So a developer in this street and the Board of Public Works accepted this street. So staff wants to codify it and add these parking controls to the Title 15. And also the ordinance adds 2 loading zones. The first one is on 1022 North College Avenue, is blue space. And the other one is another loading zone on 416 South Washington Street for the project school.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Farshi. All right, are there questions for Mr. Farshi or the other staff members here tonight? Yes, Councilmember Smith?
Thank you. I just wondered, can you kind of say something along the lines of how did you decide to remove parking or to add parking? Will you tell us about that process?
Sure. So for the first part, to remove these 3 no parking zones, a resident contacted the city and complained that, let me show you the map. So in this area, a resident contacted the city to ask to allow parking on a portion of south side of West 6th Street. The resident's house did not have a driveway, and on a street parking was not allowed in front of the resident's house, and the other neighbors had on a street parking. So the parking commission reviewed the case and first recommended removing these 2 areas of no parking in 2018. In 2020, staff reviewed the area again and presented the case to the traffic commission and did some analysis like receiving feedback from sanitation department, measuring the street, checking a crash data for the area, and checking the traffic counts. And generally, in some cases like this, staff believes that allowing on a street parking on this kind of a street with a low traffic volume can help with traffic calming, provide more parking for the neighbors, and also can resolve any confusion in terms of where people can or cannot park.
Sure, great. And then when you add, is it also based on citizens' requests and then a similar type of analysis with the city and that same kind of process?
Correct. Yeah. Generally, when we receive a request, so a staff contact the residents to ask follow-up questions. Sometimes we schedule a meeting, then a staff do the evaluation, site analysis, and in most cases, we present the case to the traffic commission and or parking commission, and after that, we present it to the council. But for this kind of adding 10 no parking zones to the Title 15, it's a new area that was added into the city limits maybe some years ago, and the Board of Public Works approved it. So it is mainly based on that.
Thank you. And when you add loading zones, what do you base that decision on? Whether there's a new business there, whether it's been requested, or a combination of all the above?
I can say the combination of all of these items. So it depends, yeah, when a business contacts the city, the planning and transportation or parking services. So we try to do the site analysis to make sure about the needs. And if, for example, the parking rules and regulations can address those needs or not, or if the loading zone need to be 24/7 or be for some specific hours, like for example, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. And after that, the loading zone become a regular parking space for the residents to use that space. So it really vary case by case.
Great. Well, I appreciate you describing the process. That was a good learning experience for me, and I hope it was for other people as well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, other questions for Mr. Farshi? I have a question regarding the no parking zones in Renwick. Can you describe why we're not allowing parking in those areas?
Yeah, I think Mr. Copper is here and can add more points, but generally it depends to the street width. If the street can support parking on one side, both sides, or no sides of the street. Based on the Bloomington Municipal Code, 12 feet of traffic should be available for the traffic flow. So yeah, in most cases, it depends to the street width and the role of the street. If it's a connector street, a neighborhood street, and how much is the traffic volume, and if there are any kind of safety issues involved or not. But for this area, I believe in most cases, the street width is the main factor.
Thank you. Mr. Copper, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add in the Renwick area, these are all areas that have existing no parking signs. They're just not codified. So these aren't, there are a couple of areas where we're actually adding parking that have existing no parking signs, and we'll remove those signs, but these aren't new no parking restrictions. They're just not in code.
Okay, and could you confirm that no parking is called for on these streets because of the width?
Correct. It's primarily based on width.
And Mr. Farshi, you said 12 feet, and that's per vehicular lane, right?
No, on both lanes. Let me double check, but yeah, I'm sure for the traffic, yeah, on both ways.
So 12 feet total for the driving surface.
Yeah, but it really depends on the street. For example, in some neighborhood streets with low traffic volume, sometimes it's okay for some cars to stop to allow the other car to pass, and then they decide to continue their trip. But in some streets like connector streets, yeah, we definitely have more width than 12 feet for the traffic volume.
So, okay, I'm sorry if I'm being dense here. So on a neighborhood street such as these, there should be a minimum of 12 feet of asphalt for the cars to move. And then if there's additional width, then there could be parking on one or both sides. Am I right?
Correct.
That's less space than I thought. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, this is Beth Rosenbarger. Can I add on a little?
Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Rosenbarger.
Sure. Just to clarify, so 12 is a minimum required in code. And I think as Mr. Farshi was explaining, as staff, when we review the streets and the widths,
I guess there's some subjective nature of when the minimum is enough and when it needs to be more than the minimum for the space. And we base that on the street typology and the existing traffic volumes on the street. So again, kind of as he was describing, on a neighborhood residential street where there are a few hundred vehicles or less a day, the 12 feet can be just fine. But on a connector street where you're seeing more vehicles and the likelihood of two vehicles meeting is higher, then we would, not allow parking on both sides in those cases in order to have more space for vehicle movement. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I just sent the BMC 15.32.140 in the chat, which describes that part of code.
I see. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for staff about Ordinance 2113? All right, seeing none, we thank the staff and we'll go to the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on Ordinance 2113, which involves parking zones and loading zones? If you have a comment, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, or you can type in a chat to the meeting host. Do we have any comments, Mr. Lucas?
I see no takers at the moment.
I'm hearing crickets.
No, I don't think we have any requests for comment.
All right, thank you. All right, are there any final questions from council members? Okay, any final comments or perhaps a do pass recommendation?
Move do pass.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to pass this legislation back to the full council at a regular session. And I will again call the names as I see them on our screen, on my screen. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Volan.
Yes.
Councilmember Scamilleri.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
I said yes in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Sims.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Yes.
And Councilmember Rollo.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So that's a do pass recommendation of 8-0. And I believe that concludes our business for the evening. Is that right, Mr. Lucas? We don't have anything else? Okay.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you to all the staff who are here to present and to all my colleagues, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you
Good night.
very much. Good night.